Could you go over some ways that you've applied minimalism to your business, specifically your brick and mortar coffee shop? Now, you talk about brick and mortar businesses in your book, right?
Yeah.
I think too often we think that, like, well, if I want my business to be legitimate, then I need a storefront, or I need an office space, or I need, a place for clients to, whatever. Can you talk a little bit about this concept and how it has metastasized into our culture?
Yeah, it's basically running a business to look good for other people. Like that's really what it seems like. It seems like, well, if I want my business to be legitimate, then I do need to have things like an office or like a nice couch that people can sit on while they're waiting to meet with me. And it's like even smaller things, like having an office at all. For me, I don't need an office. I don't meet with people for work. Like most people think I don't exist because I don't do things in public very often. But it's like, I want to run my business for me. I want to run my business for what's best for me and the freedom that I want in my life that my business can provide. And so when I'm thinking about decisions, it's like, is this decision just going to look good for the outside world? In which case, maybe I don't need that. Or is this decision going to give me more peace and freedom? It's like, okay, I want that one instead of what looks good on Instagram.
Yeah, and so I think the question then becomes is the brick and mortar business necessary with respect to our coffee shop? So we got into this coffee shop in a weird way. So our friends Joshua and Sarah Weaver, who have done a lot of photography for us. In fact, they did the photo on this book and I think this one, on Essential. So they just did a lot of photography. We hired them. They're freelance photographers, and also they worked for this design firm. And they were kind of tired of doing what they were doing, and they wanted to find a way to have a community space. And well, what does a community space look like? There are a bunch of different things, but for them, they were really passionate about coffee. And so a community space probably does require a brick and mortar presence, right? Yes. That was the what that they wanted to accomplish. Now, we could figure out the where and the how and the why. All those things are important to ask, but we wanted to help them open the shop, and the way we wanted to help is we screened our documentary down there in St. Petersburg, because St. Petersburg is where minimalism all started for us. My mother lived down there, and I really fell in love with the community. And when she passed, that's where I had to actually deal with her stuff. And so I really enjoyed the community down there, love the people. There's a lot of culture per capita in St. Petersburg, Florida. And they were opening this coffee shop because it was pretty much a coffee desert. There was not great coffee. There were Starbucks and 7-Eleven, but there was not a good. Now there are several, but there was not a great coffee shop back then. And so we're like, oh yeah, let's help our friends. So we'll go screen our documentary. Well, we get down there about 3 days before it's about to open, and their final funding had fallen through, and they were like, we don't think we're going to be able to open the shop. We don't have enough money. And so Ryan and I went to them and said, okay, how much money do you need? Let's see if we could find a way to raise it. And literally how much money they needed was about all Ryan and I had saved for the last, 5 or 6 years. Yeah. And we just said, okay, we believe not in the brick and mortar space. We believe in what you're trying to accomplish here. We believe in you as people, and we want to work with you. And so let's partner in this business. And now we're actually opening a restaurant with them in the same space. And so that brick and mortar space is, it makes sense, to have a restaurant. But even then, it's not going to be. All that we're doing is very minimalist with respect to our approach. It's not cutting corners, but what is the minimum viable equipment, minimum viable customer base that we need? Yeah. We're not trying to get every person in St. Petersburg. We're trying to find what do we need in order to have the doors open, pay our employees, pay the owners a living wage, but also we're not focused on how do I get a line down the block, how do I have the most popular coffee shop in town. Having a brick and mortar business makes sense, understanding that it's also going to, there's more overhead in that business than there is in this far more popular business that we have called the Minimalists, because we have employees and we have to be there every single day from open until close, and people call off, and there's insurance, and we have to pay rent, and there's heating and air. We've got this big old building, and it's hot as hell in Florida, so it costs a lot to air condition this place in the summer.
Yeah.
And so there are all these embedded costs that you have to think about, because the margins on coffee are decent, but you have to sell a lot of cups of coffee in order to pay to air condition a place in the summer in Florida.
Yeah, there's the more expenses you have, the more responsibility that comes with it, right? So you need to make sure that you do have the volume. It's just it's kind of similar in my business. I went from having probably 10 to 15 customers a year when I was doing design for client work, to doing products like books, where like I can't sell 10 books a year and live.
Right.
So I needed to make sure, like, okay, can I make sure that there is a volume there? Like, am I going to be able to reach enough, or am I currently reaching enough people to be able to move into a product business where there does need to be there just needs to be volume in that kind of business? And if the answer is yes, then okay, yeah, it makes sense. But I still make sure I keep my expenses as low as possible. Don't have an office space. I live pretty leanly. So I know that, like, even if it's a slow month with book sales, that it's going to be okay. And then I also, for my own business, I also kind of diversify. It's like diversifying in investments. It's like, I don't know how to invest in individual stocks, but if I just use index funds, then it's kind of investing in everything, and then it's kind of diversified. So in my business, I have podcasts that generate a bit of income, courses, books, software company. So it's easier to see, like, okay, well, if one thing isn't doing as well, then other things will hopefully pick up the slack. And then it's just, as long as I keep the expenses down, and I don't think like, well, a legitimate business, as soon as you start thinking like, oh, a legitimate business needs X, then it's like, then you get into tricky territory. Or even things like mailing lists. Like, I prune my mailing list all the time. If people aren't opening my emails, they're not getting value from them. So I can delete them. And people are like, well, how do you get over like deleting thousands of people from your mailing list? I'm like, they cost me money. Like, if they're getting no value from it, if I'm only having to pay for people who don't get any value from the things I'm writing, you bet I'm going to delete them. Like, I feel good removing them. They're not going to get emails they don't want anymore. I'm not going to be paying for people that are getting emails they don't want anymore. So I keep my costs low.